The river never slept. It whispered day and night, carrying secrets in its current. Secrets the town never dared to speak aloud. Locals said the water had memory, that it pulled in what it wanted and never gave back. Most stayed away after dusk. But not Anna. Anna loved the river. She loved the wildflowers that grew along its edge, the yellow blossoms that opened at twilight as if they were greeting her. She made it her ritual, slipping out with a wicker basket to collect them. Her mother always warned her not to go. "Things watch near water," she'd say. Anna only laughed. She thought her mother was just being superstitious. That night, the sky was bruised with storm clouds, and the river looked swollen and darker than usual. Yet Anna felt drawn to it more than ever, like something was calling her. The deeper she walked into the woods, the quieter the world became. No birds, no crickets. Only the river, louder than ever, churning like it was alive. She knelt on the bank, fingers brushing the petals of a white flower she had never seen before. Its stem was slick and cold, as if it had been waiting. She plucked it, placed it in her basket, and bent for another. That's when she felt it. A ripple, not in the water, but in the air behind her. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head. The woods were empty. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, reaching toward her like fingers. She shook it off, telling herself she was imagining things. But when she looked down again, the flowers had changed. Their petals were no longer soft white or yellow. They had turned a deep, bruised purple, edges curling like lips trying to whisper. She dropped one back to the ground, pulsed, almost like a heartbeat, before going still. Anna staggered back. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The river's current grew louder, rushing as though something beneath the surface was breathing harder and harder. Then she heard it. Her name, Anna. It came not from the woods, but from the water itself. The voice was soft, laced with a melody that didn't belong to this world. Anna's heart hammered. She told herself she was hearing things, a trick of wind and water. But then it called again, closer. Anna. She dropped her basket and ran. The flowers spilled into the mud, their petals glowing faintly in the gloom. She didn't dare look back, but she felt it. The river's pulse stretching behind her like invisible hands, reaching. That night, Anna didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing the phantom rush of the river even miles away. In her dreams, she saw herself kneeling by the bank, but it wasn't her reflection that stared back from the water. It was something else, something waiting. Anna told no one what she saw. By morning, she tried to convince herself it was exhaustion, a trick of the storm. Yet her basket sat by the door, stained with damp soil. And inside, tucked between the wilted blossoms, lay the same strange white flower she swore she dropped by the river. Its petals were damp, almost bleeding into the wicker. She threw it away. Hours later, when she came back, the flower was sitting on the windowsill, facing inward like it had grown there overnight. Her hands trembled. By dusk, Anna decided she had to know what was happening. She went back to the river. The woods were quieter than ever, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The water reflected the dying light, slick and black. This time, the flowers were everywhere, lining the bank in thick clusters, their pale heads bending toward her like watchers. And in the middle of them stood the basket she'd abandoned the night before, perfectly upright, bone dry. Her breath caught. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the wicker, something cold brushed her wrist. She yanked her hand back. The river stirred, though no wind blew. Slowly, something began to rise from its depths. Not a person, not an animal. A shape, tall and twisting, made of water itself, with eyes that glowed faintly like the moon's reflection. It stared at her, mouth opening with the sound of rushing currents. And then it smiled. Anna stumbled back, but the flowers clung to her ankles, their stems winding like ropes. The thing spoke again, its voice like drowning. "You picked from me. Now I pick you." The flowers tightened, dragging her closer to the bank. Anna screamed, clawing at the earth, but her hands only pulled up mud and roots. The river's shape reached out, its watery arms stretching toward her chest as if to claim her heart. Just before it touched her, the world went dark. When Anna woke, she was back in her bed, soaked to the bone, her basket of flowers sitting neatly beside her. But her reflection in the mirror was no longer her own. Something had followed her back. The moonlight stretched long silver fingers across the river, breaking in ripples as the current carried something beneath its surface. Lena sat frozen on the muddy bank, her breath ragged, her heart rattling inside her chest. The bouquet she had gathered, daisies, bluebells, and wild roses, lay scattered in the water, petals drifting downstream like little boats. She had dropped them the moment the whisper first echoed. It wasn't just the sound of someone calling her name anymore. No, it was closer now, more deliberate, as though the river itself had learned to speak. Lena. Her head snapped toward the reeds swaying at the river's edge. Something stirred between them. At first it looked like a shadow, black, low, slithering, but then she saw fingers. Thin, pale fingers stretching out of the mud, clawing for purchase. Lena scrambled back, her hands sinking into damp earth. Her instincts screamed to run, but her legs betrayed her, trembling, refusing to move. The fingers dug deeper into the soil until a whole hand emerged, slick with slime. Then another, and then, with a slow, awful inevitability, something pulled itself upward. It wasn't a person. Its body seemed half-formed, as though the river had carved it from silt and bone. Its face, if it could be called that, shifted like wet clay with hollow sockets where eyes should have been. Yet, somehow, Lena felt its gaze pierce her. "Please," she whispered, not sure who she was begging. The figure tilted its head, water pouring from its hollow sockets like tears. Then, in a voice not entirely its own, it spoke. "You took what was mine." Her eyes darted to the ruined bouquet. Flowers. That was all she had picked. Wildflowers by the river. What could be so important about them? The figure moved closer, dragging itself across the bank, leaving streaks of black mud in its wake. Lena stumbled to her feet, forcing her legs to obey, and bolted toward the path leading home. Branches clawed at her arms as she ran, snapping against her face, but she didn't dare slow down. Behind her, she heard the wet slap of the thing's movements, the sickening drag of its body through grass and soil. She burst into a clearing, panting, desperate for light. But the forest had changed. The path she knew so well twisted into shapes she didn't recognize. Trees leaned inward, forming walls of bark and shadow. "Help!" Lena cried, her voice breaking. The only reply was the wind, and the sound of the river's voice, following her still. "You cannot leave." The lantern's weak glow shuddered in her trembling hand as Marin stumbled along the riverbank, her feet slick with mud, her body aching from the icy water that had clung to her like a second skin. The forest no longer felt like a forest. It was alive, whispering, shifting, closing in. Every tree leaned toward her, their branches clawing as though they longed to drag her back to the water. Behind her, she could still hear it, the wet sound of something crawling, dragging itself up from the depths, the thing that had touched her ankle beneath the surface. She wanted to scream, but fear strangled her throat. Marin's eyes fell on the flowers scattered across the ground where she had dropped them. They weren't the soft white blossoms she remembered plucking. Now each was dark, shriveled, their petals slick with crimson, as though dipped in fresh blood. The stems twitched, moving on their own, writhing like worms. "No, no," she whispered, backing away. The river answered. Its surface rippled violently, though there was no wind. A shape began to rise again, taller this time, clearer. The figure of a woman, her face obscured by dripping strands of moss, her body made of shadow and water. She stepped onto the bank with unnatural grace, her limbs bending wrong, her head tilting at an impossible angle. "You took what was mine," the voice gurgled, echoing not from the figure's mouth but from the river itself. "And so I take what is yours." Marin shook her head, clutching her lantern like a child clings to a toy. I didn't know." But the figure raised a hand, and every flower on the ground began to coil toward her. They slithered up her legs, wrapping around her ankles, tightening until she fell to her knees. The vines pulled, dragging her closer to the river. "No, please," Marin cried, clawing at the ground. Her nails snapped as she tried to hold on, but the mud gave way beneath her. The river hissed, the voice a chorus of the drowned. The river keeps its promises. The river keeps its dead. The lantern flickered, its light sputtering out just as her body was yanked back into the black water. The forest fell silent, as though holding its breath. The only sound left was the steady ripple of the river, swallowing her whole. The river was calm again, silent, as though nothing had happened. A thin mist curled along its surface, swallowing the moonlight until the world felt drained of color. Where Marin had been pulled under, there was no trace. Not a ripple, not a scream, not even the lantern she had clung to. Only the water, endless, dark, and patient. But the forest knew. The trees leaned heavier, their bark groaning. The ground seemed to sigh with each step of the current, as if relieved that another debt had been paid. Deep beneath the surface, Marin's eyes opened. She should have drowned, but her lungs burned with something colder than water. She tried to scream, but her mouth filled with silt. Around her, shapes moved, pale hands stretching from the riverbed, their fingers weaving into her skin, stitching her into the current itself. Faces pressed against her in the darkness, their mouths wide, their eyes hollow. Some she recognized from town, others were ancient, their features long dissolved, yet still clinging, whispering. The river had claimed them. Now it claimed her. Her body dissolved slowly, her skin becoming mist, her hair unraveling into strands of moss that swam away like eels. Her voice joined theirs, a low chant, echoing from the depths. The river keeps its dead. Above, at the edge of the forest, a small figure appeared. A child, barefoot, holding a tiny bundle of white flowers. The same flowers Marin had once carried. The child's eyes were wide, unblinking, drawn to the water as though it called to her. She knelt by the bank, reaching out with a trembling hand. And for a moment, the surface stirred. Not violently, but gently, almost lovingly. From beneath, a pale hand rose. It wasn't monstrous this time, but delicate, almost human. Marin's hand. Her lips never broke the water, but her voice did, soft, almost kind. "Come closer." The child hesitated, then stepped forward. The river rippled, stretching open like a mouth. The forest leaned in once more. The night deepened, and the river, eternal and hungering, prepared to keep another promise. Because the river remembers, and it always takes what is owed.